All right, looks like it is 10 a.m. Welcome back. Before we get started, first of all, I'm using a headset today. Let me know if you cannot hear me. I know there were some audio issues on Monday, and it just seemed like I needed to try to do something better. So I went out and bought a Logitech headset with the microphone, and I used it for my Monday night class, and everybody told me it worked really well. They could hear me much better. And so again, let me know. I'm going to get started here in a minute. Let me know if you cannot hear me, and if not, I'll try to do something else with my audio. But it looks like we've got. I'm just looking at the class. We've got 5 people in here. We'll start here in a moment. Essentially today, the goal is we're going to go and we're going to finish up chapter 6, which is looking again at the closing entries. I don't think that's going to take us the full 50 minutes. So my plan would be to split part of the class into, once I looked at it, and we'll see if there's any questions. I definitely want to talk about the exam today, exam 2, which will be next week. And I also want to talk about some review opportunities next week on our sessions next week. And I'll talk about our class format next week, as next week is the exam 2. All right, so this past Monday, we did go over the essentials of the characteristics of closing entries. And today I want to make sure I go back over at least 1 or 2 more problems. But again, please let me know if you're not seeing anything or if you have any questions before we get started. So does anybody have any specific things they want me to address on chapter 6 before I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in a moment? Those that are in class today with me? All right, if nothing, I'm going to bring up my screen. And again, let me get into, I'm going to go into the chapter 6 homework. Let me minimize this. All right, so you should all see my screen. Make sure I got the right one up. All right, I'm going to get into the chapter 6 homework. And again, I'm going to go to the student view, because that way it kind of helps me work it side by side with you. That way you don't just look at the answers. But let me get into the chapter 6 homework. And I'm going to be on problem number 6 is the one I want to look at. All right. Again, I'm just going to double check my screen one more time just to make sure we got it. All right. Do please let me know if you don't see problem number 6. And again, so remember the essentials of closing entries is well, I guess 2 things. Is number 1, we're working with temporary accounts. And remember that temporary accounts are your income statement accounts, which are revenues and expenses, and the drawing. So in this problem right here, they give us all of the accounts, but the ones we're going to primarily be focusing on is when you see drawing, that's a temporary account, and then everything else, fees income, which is revenue, and then of course you've got all these expenses, those are the other temporary accounts. The only permanent account we're going to be working with is capital, but we're not going to be closing out capital. We're going to be transferring all of these temporary accounts into capital. That's the idea. So kind of like your 2 objectives, you're going to be zeroing out temporary accounts and updating the capital account. Now, in this problem, I like this problem. They have you do a couple things. So number 1, if you look at the requirements, it says they want you to journalize the closing entries in the general journal, which we'll do. And then I also want to focus on the posting aspect of it and make sure that you see that once you've recorded these journal entries, that when you look in your ledger and you've posted them, that these accounts will in fact be at 0. Now, one thing, when you guys go and do this on your own, remember, when you get to that ledger, they have a little hint down here. It says, be sure to enter beginning balances. So all these balances they're giving you right here, when you get to the ledger aspect, you have to actually physically enter those into the ledger. Otherwise, when you go to submit it, I think it'll probably take some points off, at least on your homework. All right, so let's do the first one, and I'll do these again one by one again. Try to just take my time with it, and then if there's any questions on anything as I go through this with you, let me know. So the first entry we'll do is simply to close out the revenue account. So the revenue account we've been using is fees income, which is right here. Notice the balance is $163,600. Now let me get my stylus out real quick, and because I always like to give you my visual illustration with the T account idea. But the idea here is that if you were to go into your ledger and you would see fees income right now, and we'll go there in a moment in the Connect homework, but this credit means that it has a credit balance of $163,600. That's the balance right now. And our goal is we want to get this account to zero. And in the meantime, we're going to take this balance of $163,600 and we're going to transfer it into this other temporary account that they introduced into Chapter 6, and that account is called Income Summary. So what will happen is we're going to be debiting fees income. By debiting fees income, that's a reduction of revenue. We're going to get that revenue account to zero, and then we're going to be crediting Income Summary for that $163,600. So we'll be debiting fees income. And once we do that, and then we'll post it, we'll have a zero balance, and then Income Summary will then have a credit of $163,600. So in the actual journal entry, let me page down, you'd have to go into that first cell, click on fees income, that'll be our debit, and then we'll find Income Summary, which is right there, and then just type in $163,600 as a debit, and then $163,600 as a credit, and then hit record entry, and then that'll be your first entry. Okay, so let me do that, and then let's look at the journal, and again, that would be your first entry. And then once we've got all these entered, we'll do that second, because I noticed when I went through this with my Monday night class, if I try to go, if I went to the ledger, it seemed like my work was not saved, and so we're gonna do all the closing entries first. We'll focus on just the journal aspect first, and then we'll go to the ledger and we'll show you the ledger aspect. All right, so does anybody have any issues or any questions on what I just showed you on the first closing entry that we'll be doing, that we just did? Any issues so far? Okay, no issues, good. All right, let me clear that. And so then we'll go to the second entry, which is to close out your expenses. Now, on your expenses, these are pretty easy. Just look for the expense account. We've got advertising, depreciation, rent, salaries, utilities. So notice that these all have a debit balance. That's a normal balance. And so just like I did with fees income, just to illustrate. So again, the idea would be, and I'll just use one of these. So let's say we've got advertising expense. And let's say that, again, in our ledger balance, we would have a $5,800 debit balance. And of course, we want that to go to zero. So if we want to get that to zero, we're going to have to credit, which would reduce your advertising expense for $5,800. And when you do that, then it would be at zero. And of course, we have to have some place to put an offset. So again, we're going to put that debit into Income Summary. So that $5,800 would go to Income Summary. Now, for efficiency purposes, they tend to have us do this all in one entry. So we'll do a compound entry. We'll do all of the expenses. So we'll have advertising expense credit, depreciation credit, rent expense, and so forth. And then we'll just combine those and put as one number, as a one debit number, that balance into Income Summary. So let's go down and do it. So again, we're going to be debiting income summary. So I'm going to find the income summary account. That'll get the debit, and then I'm just going to plug all the expenses. So I think they put these in order. So you got advertising, and then depreciation, and then we've got rent, and then we've got salaries, and then finally we've got utilities. And then all you got to do is you just have to go up above and then just pull the numbers down. So advertising expense is 5,800, and let me clear my drawing there. 5,800, that'll be credit. Depreciation was 1,000, credit. You've got rent, which was 4,600, I'll credit. Then you've got salaries expense 38,800, credit. And then utilities expense is 7,720, credit. And then at this point, you just have to add them up and get a total debit to offset that. So if you add these up, 5,800 plus 1,000 plus 4,600 plus 38,800 plus 7,720, that would give you 57,920. That would be your total debit. And then of course, I'm going to hit record entry, and then let's look at the journal. So that would be what your second entry would then look like. And then notice that regarding income summary, you would have a credit of 163,600 and a debit of 57,920, and that would represent the revenue and the expenses that you just closed out. Okay, so if we wanted to draw that, just to give you the visual of the income summary account. So if I do that over here, so just again, this is just focusing on income summary, because remember that's going to be our third entry, is closing that account out. So we would have a credit of 163,600, a debit of 57,920. So the reason I'm showing you this is because, again, on our journal entry number 3, we're going to have to take income summary and then now close that out to the capital account. And to close it out, you have to, of course, get a balance. So to get the balance for income summary, again, you just take the 163,600 and subtract out the 57,920, and that would give you 105,680. Get my mouse. So 105,680, and of course that would be a credit balance right now in income summary. So if we want to make that go to 0, we're going to have to debit income summary for 105,680, and then the offset, of course, is going to be transferred into capital. So let's look at the transaction list again, and we'll go to this third entry. And again, so we're going to be debiting income summary, and then just look for the capital account. Debit 105,680, credit 105,680. I'm going to hit record, and then let's look at that. Let's look at our 3 entries so far. And at this point, we would got, again, the first one is revenues are closed to income summary. The second one is your expenses are closed to income summary. And then the third entry, is, which is this one, is your income summary is now closed out to capital. Okay. And that would take care of the first 3. And then there's only one more that we have to worry about. And then that's essentially it for your closing entries. Okay. Any questions so far up through the first 3 entries on what I've just showed you? All right, good. So on the 4th entry, it's going to be to close out the drawing. And of course, the drawing account is right there. It's got a debit balance of 8,200, which, essentially means, again, I'll draw this out one more time on drawing. So if I did drawing, debit balance 8,200. If we want to close this out, we're going to have to credit drawing for 8,200, and then that'll give it to 0. But remember, the offset here goes to capital. Remember, we don't close this one out to income summary. So we're going to take that 8,200 and essentially debit capital for $8,200. So let's do the entry. So we'll look for capital, which is right there, and then find the drawing account, which was, I passed it, there it is, and then just enter your 8,200 debit and 8,200 credit. I hit record entry, and let's look at the journal. And at this point, I'm going to clear these drawings. That would take care of all of our closing entries. That's everything that you've got to be doing in Chapter 6 to clean up the books, close out the books, and get them ready for that next period. Okay. All right. So, again, I'll just kind of, partially mention the exam too. So even on exam 2, you might have to do something very similar to this on the exam, where they'll give you a list of accounts and they may say, prepare the closing entries. And so this is essentially what you're going to have to do. All right. Okay, now, in terms of the second requirement, notice this is the ledger aspect. I want to make sure you physically see this part and to see if you have any questions. So remember, the problem said they wanted you to enter the beginning balances. So let's do that first. So capital was 85,620. And so that basically means you've got to enter, they want you to go into this ledger, wherever you see the balance, the first block, the first cell, that's where they want you to put these balances in there if there's anything. So that's all I'm doing right now. So we've got capital. The drawing balance was what, 8,200. Fees income was 163.6. And notice, by the way, you just enter the balance as an absolute number. You don't enter it as a credit or a debit per se. You just say enter the number. So what will happen is, assuming you make the appropriate closing entry as a debit or credit, these temporary accounts should say 0 when we get that part. Advertising is 5,800. I believe depreciation, I remember that one, that was 1,000. Your rent expense was 4,600. Salaries expense was 38,800. And then utilities expense was 7720. All right, now I believe that's all of the opening balances. Notice they're not having you do anything with the other accounts like cash and AR and supplies, because those are not involved in the closing process. So I believe, just to simplify this chapter, the only accounts they listed here in the ledger were the ones that we're working with. So basically capital on down, in case you're wondering. All right, now, so if we go ahead now and do the post, so if I go back, if we do the post, so remember, for fees income, we had a debit of 163,600. And notice that when we posted that entry, that balance goes to 0. And that's essentially what you want to have happen. So all these accounts need to be zeroed out. So fees income was debited. That was that first entry. And then if you recall, income summary would have been credited for 163,600. And then all of your expenses get credited. So I'm going to go to advertising expense, enter the credit, 5,800. Depreciation gets 1,000. Rent gets 4,600. Salaries gets 38,800. Whoops, I put one too many 8s in there. And then utilities gets 7720. And I believe all those expenses added up was 57,920. And notice that's the balance when I plug that into income summary, that debit, here's your credit. Notice that's that balance that I showed you earlier in a T account form in terms of what the income summary balance was, which is 105,680, which represents net income. And then when we did the third entry to close out income summary, we posted a In this case, we need to do a debit of 105,680, and then go into capital and put a credit of 105,680. So notice that you got to make sure you know what you're debiting or crediting, because with income summary, I put the debit here. Notice it goes to 0, and then the credit offset now goes to increasing capital on the credit side. Now, the last one, which is on your drawing, so remember we've got to credit drawing, 8,200, and then debit capital, 8,200, and I believe that would take care of all the postings from all these journal entries. So remember, fees, income, income summary, every single one of these line item debits and credits are now transferred into the ledger. So if we go back now and look again at the ledger, let me get my mouse. You'll notice, just to kind of do a quick review of this, look, all your temporary accounts are now at 0. Drawing is 0, fees, income is 0, income summary is 0, advertising 0, depreciation 0, and that's what you want, okay? And so that essentially, here's the rest of them: rent, salaries, and then utilities. And so then the last thing just to focus on, now that your temporary accounts are at 0, is to now go back and look at that capital account and look at the balance, because that's essentially the second, I call it the second objective to closing, which is to update the capital account. And so the capital account began the period with 85,620. We put a credit, which is net income, that's an increase to capital, and then we put that debit of drawing, and then notice now the capital balance right now is right at 183,100, which should be the same balance that would be on the balance sheet. In this case, since it was December 31st, this 183,100 would be the capital balance right at the end of the year. Okay, all right, now, having said that, and then I think there's one more question I think they ask on the analysis part, and it says, the question says, what is the balance of salaries expense after closing entries are posted? And of course, what they're wanting you to do, we know the answer is 0, but what they're wanting you to focus on is to go back to salaries and just to make sure that this account balance is in fact 0. And so then what they want you to do is to go into this analysis part and then just enter 0 and to put your answer in there like that. See if I had some questions from my Monday night class regarding some of these analysis types of questions. So I just want to make sure I went over that with you as well. All right. So to recap, you've got to be responsible for recording these 4 types of entries on the exam. And you should also know how to post these entries into something like a ledger like this as well. That could be good for definitely one question on the exam next week. Okay. All right, so let me pause here for a moment. And any questions, any issues, anything you would like me to go back over, anything I just commented on, anything at all? And I hope I'm coming in clear. Again, my microphone, make sure I can hear everybody. Checking my volume. So are we good? Is anybody having any struggles, any problems with any of the closing entries in Chapter 6? And if I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume if you had to take the exam right now and you had a problem like this, you would have no problem entering the closing entries and posting them, and you'd get your 10 points. I think each of the problems we'll go over in a moment. Each of the problems I'm giving you is 10 points. And so if you had to do a problem like this, it'd be worth probably 10 points. And so assuming you understand this right now, you should all get 10 out of 10 on that particular problem. All right, anything at all, any questions? If all I'm hearing is silence, I'm gonna wrap this up and then we're gonna take a look at the study guide. So I'm gonna assume that at this point, I think I've shown you a few of these problems. Chapter 6 is not, it's not a complicated chapter. You just gotta follow the 4 steps. You just gotta do those 4 entries and post them. Everything else, there's nothing new. There's no new transactions. They don't even have you do the financial statements in this chapter. It's just, essentially, closing up the ledger, updating the ledger, and getting ready for that next period. Okay, fine. So that's it on my demonstrations for this chapter. So I'm just watching my time because I do want to talk about the test and show you a couple practice things you can look at. And also I want to talk about the format of the class for next week, if there are no questions, because I think I've shown you at least a couple of these. The rest of your homework assignments, again, I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to work everyone out with you in class, but go to Blackboard. I do have a video on all your Connect homework that are essentially these problems, and you can look at those as well to assist you if you get stuck as well. Okay, so I went ahead and I sent out this morning announcement email. I sent it to all your student emails, and I actually went ahead and put out that study guide this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Let me share my screen. And so right now, you should all see this exam 2 study guide. So let me take a couple minutes, and I just want to talk just about the exam format, some specifics, and then see if you have any questions on that. So first of all, remember this semester you get 3 exams. This is exam number 2. And look at the concepts covered, and let me get my arrow just to focus on this. So notice that, hold on just a second, let me double check to make sure my screen is up. All right. All right, so notice we've got chapters covered is chapters 4, 5, and 6, so 3 chapters. The exam consists of 35 multiple choice questions. I weighted these questions at 2 points each, so that would give you 70 points. And then there's 3 problems worth 10 points each, so that would give you 30. Your exam time is 2 hours, which is 120 minutes. It's exam 2 is located in Connect. Again, it's an online exam. The exam dates start November 2nd. That's Monday. So again, today is the 28th. So Monday is November 2nd, and the due date will be Sunday, November 8th by 11:59 p.m. Everything down here is all the concepts. I came up with all these concepts that are on the exam after I wrote the exam. I wrote it and then went back just to make sure that everything I've covered in class is on there. And so notice everything from chapter 4 was your journal, ledger concept, posting, trial balance. We looked at adjusting entries in chapter 5. Remember the concept of book value. Know how these adjusting entries affect your financial statements. And then of course, just wrapping this up, closing entries is chapter 6, temporary versus permanent accounts. And then understanding, I've been talking about this, constantly, is, why do we prepare closing entries? Okay, so again, the format is it's next week. And so the other thing I want to mention is so I'm using next week's class periods. We've got 2 of them, Monday and Wednesday, as review sessions for anybody who needs extra help. So I also understand that, you could even take the exam next week during our class time, even though it's a 2-hour test. I don't know, it'll take you all of 2 hours, but some of you may want to take that exam at 10 a.m. or even 9 a.m. or whatever, and get that done either Monday, Wednesday, and I'm giving you the option to do that. So next week's class will purely be review. I'll log in, I'll send out a couple reminders, and then what'll happen is anybody logs in, just let me know. We can go back and I can work previous problems from any chapter, chapters 4, 5, and 6. I can talk about any of the homework problems, anything you want me to discuss to help you get ready. And just remember, if you do that, you're pretty much telling me you're not going to take the test until after next Wednesday, which is fine. And so you have the whole week to take it. It's a 2-hour time period. And of course, if there's any technology issues as you are taking the exam, just email me and I can work with anybody that's got any. I don't think there was too many last time. I think everybody got through it. The format's very similar to the last test, so that way you got a little more confidence knowing what to expect. And so that'll be next week. And just to kind of give you a preview, once we get past exam 2 after next week, the following week we'll be looking at the project. So we'll probably spend at least a week, maybe a day, maybe 2 days looking at that project, showing you how to work it. And then after that, we just got 2 more chapters to go, which are reinforcing a lot of the stuff we just did. which is on adjusting entries and just looking at, we're going to take some time just studying some financial statements, just looking at some interpretations and how do you analyze financial statements. So just to kind of round it up, because we're almost already into November, and so we're going to rounding out at about, after this week's done, it'll be like 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks left in the semester. So it's really coming up on us real fast. And I do believe the week of Thanksgiving, I believe that Wednesday is considered part of your fall break, so we won't even meet that Wednesday. So it's going to be wrapping up quicker than you think. So, but right now our focus is exam 2. And so again, here's our format. Are there any questions on the study guide? Just what I want to put up, just in terms of the format. I can tell you one thing on the 3 problems. You will get one problem, essentially one problem concept from each chapter. So chapter 4 focused on journal entries and your ledger. So you can bet that one of the problems you'll have to be recording journal entries in a journal and posting them to a ledger. Chapter 5 was on adjusting entries, so you'll have some journal entries on adjusting entries. And then problem 6, you'll have a problem on closing entries. So I'm being pretty upfront about what you got to know. So that'll be what the 3 problems represent. Everything else, again, is just practice. I'm sorry, is just multiple choice. So notice the format. 70% of this test is multiple choice, and 30% of this test is where you got to kind of do what I did on the homework I was showing you today, where you may have to click some drop-down arrows and then enter some amounts into the journal. Okay. All right, now, does anybody have any issues or questions, any concerns right now on just the study guide, anything at all? I'll take any questions right now on that. Everybody's good, right? Everybody's ready? They understand, you know what to expect, right? Okay, fine, awesome. So after that, so another thing I did, which is similar to what I did on exam 1, is I went ahead and gave you some practice questions as well. So let me show you where those are at. Let me go back to my screen. Let me get rid of this, and I'm going to move something around here just a second. I'm going to go back to my instructor view. All right. It always logs me out, so let me log right back in just for a moment. All right. I have no idea what that is. All right. So your practice questions, the way you can access the practice exam questions is you have to log in to Connect directly, because I did not want to pair it up with the Blackboard gradebook since it is practice. Because anything that I pair up with the Connect gradebook and Blackboard always typically has point values, and I didn't want you to get confused when you go to look at your Blackboard grade points. So what you do is you log in directly to Connect, and I had a question from my Monday class about how do you do that, because they're so used to going through Blackboard. Well, if you and let me show you what I would do. So when you guys go into Blackboard, just go over to where it says right here, where it says Connect Website, click that link, and I'll just show you right now. If I click Connect Website, and then what you'll do is you just have to click this where it says Connect Account, and that'll take you right into your sign-on page to get into Connect. Once you do that, the practice exam 2 questions are should be at the very end of all your assignments. And so it should show up after the chapter 13 assignments. In fact, let me show you how you would see it. So you would see it right there. Make sure you got that. Which notice you've got chapter 13 homework, chapter 13 quiz, and then you'll see something right there where it says exam 2 practice questions, chapters 4, 5, and 6. I would highly recommend that you take a look at all these. I think there's like 59 questions. I was just randomly picking as many questions as I could pull from the test bank just as practice. Some are true false questions, some are multiple choice, but they also cover a lot of the concept and get you kind of ready for the type of questions that you're going to be asked on the exam. You can practice these questions as many times as you want. Just hit enter. It gives you all sorts of assistance if you miss something. It gives you explanations if you miss something or what the correct answer is as well. And so I would suggest I think it would be a good idea for everybody to do these practice questions before you actually attempt the exam. That would be my suggestion. All right. Does anybody have any questions on the practice questions at all? Anything? Okay, fine. So what I did with my Monday class, and I'm looking at my time, I've got about 15 minutes left. I'm just kind of trying to be efficient today, is I went through a few of the practice questions with my Monday night class, and I think it was somewhat helpful, and they were kind of, some of the questions they missed, but I'm going to put these up here in a moment. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to kind of get some feedback from you just to see, it's a kind of a good test to see where you're at right now, what you know, maybe what you don't know. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click begin. And I'll pull up a few of these I got in 14 minutes. We'll see how many I can get through, but I'm not going to go through all of them. But here's a couple of examples of what you could get. So check this one out. This is question number 3 on your practice questions. I'll give you a moment. Take a look at it. And I'll give you a moment to see if you can answer it first, and then I'll go over the answer and show you how, once I enter it, how it's going to record it once you do it as you're studying. So take a moment, read this, and see if you can answer the correct, get the correct radio button or the correct, A, B, C, or D choice. I'll give you a moment. All right, any guesses on, does anybody have a guess or what they think the correct answer should be on this question right now? Any guesses? A, B, C, or D? What do you guys think? Somebody say something. I want to make sure at least somebody's listening. I know everybody's on mute, but anybody can chime in. You can always unmute yourself. So I want to make sure I'm not just talking to myself today.
Is it B?
Anybody else think it's B? Would you debit fees income and credit cash? Remember, if they say you're receiving cash, remember that would be increasing cash, which shouldn't that be a debit? Remember, anytime you increase cash, it should be a debit. So I probably wouldn't say B.
Is it A?
Debit cash, that's a good choice too. Debit cash, credit fees income. Remember, this one says you're receiving cash from a credit client, from a client on account. Remember, that's accounts receivable, right? So if I look at these, did anybody think it's this one? See? Where you're debiting cash and crediting accounts receivable? Because that should be the correct answer. So let me just plug in an incorrect answer and show you, like let's say we plugged in B. And then there's a button up here where it says check my work. If I do check my work, notice it comes up as a red mark. It doesn't give you the answer, but it comes up as a red mark, so you can at least see right there that that's not the correct answers. Now, of course, if you go back now, I don't know if it lets me do it right now. If I go back, I've already, if I say return to the question, let's type in the correct answer, which should be debit cash, credit accounts receivable. And of course, if I do check my work, notice now you get that green check mark. Now, if I go return to question, and then if I do score the answer, and I do score now, what'll happen is notice it says scored, you got it correct. And then it also gives you the explanation down at the bottom. It says the journal entry to record the receipt of cash from credit clients on account must both increase cash via debit and reduce accounts receivable via a credit. So again, just to kind of point this out as you're kind of going through some of these, if you miss any of these, which is fine, it's just practice, you can click the score now and then it'll score it and then it'll kind of give you the explanation. Or sometimes you can do check my work and just to kind of see where you're at to see if you're getting it right or wrong. Either way, you can do these multiple times and I'm hoping it'll assist you. If you miss something and maybe it's a concept you didn't quite get just yet, you can go back over it, and then that's how you learn, from your mistakes. This is, essentially when I was, studying for the CPA exam, this is how I did it. You practice problems. That's how you get good at something. You practice it, and then you miss it. And then once you miss it, you say, why am I missing it? What am I not understanding? And that way, once you figure that part out, then you won't miss it again. Okay, so yeah, so in this one, you'll get some questions, and this would be obviously a chapter 4 type of question because they're just purely asking you what accounts get debited and what accounts get credited. So you could get multiple choice questions in this type of format. Okay, let me show you a couple more. I'm going to skip up now to number 14, and I got to go through all these. It makes me hit the score now. I can't skip unless I do this. Yeah, question 14, that's what I want on. If I can get to that question right now, let's see, it'll let me do it. So it's not letting me skip ahead on this one. I should have set that up. It just, let me get out of that function. All right, let me just hit the arrow. So I just picked a few random questions that I thought are good questions just to kind of go over in class with you today since I've got you for a few more minutes. Let me get to 14. All right, so check out this question. So I'll give you a moment. Again, they give you a business transaction and you got to figure out the right accounts that are debited and credited. So take a moment, shouldn't take you too long, and see if you can get the right answer on, this is number 14 of your practice. So I'm hoping when you read this, you should be thinking right away, because these are, every transaction here is review really from chapters 3, but hopefully you're seeing right away an obvious answer. Any obvious choices, any choices on what you think the correct answer should be? Anybody? A, B, C, or D? Any guesses?
Is it C?
Let's try. So if I click in C, and notice it says we are buying supplies on account. So remember the concept of buying supplies. You should be increasing supplies, and on account would be accounts payable. And so if we chose C, you're saying debit accounts payable and credit supplies. So think about that. Think about the implication there. If we debit accounts payable, what does that mean? That means does that mean we're increasing accounts payable or reducing accounts payable? And if we're crediting supplies, does that mean we're increasing supplies or does that mean that we are decreasing supplies? And I'm just saying that, so sometimes when you go through some of these, if you miss them, think about why that would not be correct. Now, if I click check my work, let's see if that's right or not. Notice it gives us a red X, meaning it's not correct. So if I go back to the question, so we know it can't be that, then and that was, you had the right accounts. It should be accounts payable and supplies, but it's not going to be debit accounts payable and credit supplies. Does anybody else have another option? Nobody has any other guesses? Everybody thinks it's C? We're down to either choices A, B, or D.
I'll say B.
Let me try that. I'll put B, and then if I do check my work, and notice you got it, you got the green check. So again, I put these practice questions out there for you. You guys can go in and just practice them. You can take them today, and I think that's a good start for some of you to say, what do I know, what do I not know? And then that could also be a point of where you need to go back and focus some of your studies. All right, that was 14. Let me see if I could do a couple more. Let me skip up to let me get into the 20s. I want to get to a couple of these adjusting entries. All right, here's one. This is number 22. And this one is on the concept of depreciation. That was from chapter 5. So again, look, I'm watching my time here, but take a quick moment, see if you can get this answer. This is they purchased equipment. They give you the estimated life of 7 years, salvage value 200, using straight line method. Can you figure out the depreciation for the first month? So take a moment. Let's see if you do what? Somebody got it? What do you think it is?
C.
C, 600? Let's do check my work. Oh, nope, it's not C. Let me give you some hints as you're trying this out. Remember the formula? I'll write it up here. Remember, it's cost minus salvage value divide by the estimated life of the in this case it'd be of the equipment. Cost being what, 4,400 minus 200. The question is what do you want to divide by? It says 7 years. So, but they want only 1 month. So any guesses on what probably would be the easiest thing to divide by? You don't want to divide by 7. If you divide by 7, that'll give you depreciation for a whole year. But rather, if you divide by how many months are in 7 years? It's like what, 84?
So it'll be A.
Yeah, okay.
I
Yeah.
forgot to convert the years to months.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the kind of stuff I'm hoping you'll practice this week. And yeah, if you clicked A, it should be $50 of depreciation per month. And so I put a lot of these out there. There's like 59 of these questions out here over all these 3 chapters that you can all go in and practice. Now, I know I can't go through all of them today. It's just impossible. And sometimes I don't want to do that. I'd rather you guys attempt them first and then come back and ask me, and that's what next week's about. So to kind of wrap this up a little bit. So again, you're going to have the whole next week to take this test. And next week, I am using just the class time. We have two scheduled meetings of 50 minutes, which, I look at it as that's almost like one class really, but 50 minutes is so fast. So I'm actually going to take both Monday and Wednesday as personal review sessions with the class. And maybe you want to look at some of these practice questions with me next week. I can look at more, and sometimes I can take a problem and help you dissect it, help you know how to read it, and maybe that might help you, give you some insight on how to take the test. That's part of the goal next week as well. So next week, if that's something that anybody's interested in when you come to class, and again, I'll put some reminders up in Blackboard, I can work any of these problems in the practice test with you, any of the other problems on any of the homeworks, any concept, chapters 4, 5, and 6. That's the point is to review with you. And then of course you take the time, you can take the test anytime next week. You got 7 days to do it. You just have to get it in by that Sunday, November 8th. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about next week at all before we wrap this up today? Is my audio any better today than it was on Monday? Can I get a
Yeah,
thumbs
it
up
was
from me?
clear.
It may not be the perfect. I want to make sure. I think I plugged in my headset. It's not a wireless thing. I think it's sometimes if you have a hardwired headset, you're going to get better reception. So yeah, so I hope it's better. Again, this session is being recorded. It'll be posted in Blackboard sometime a little bit later this morning. And just remember, go into Blackboard, and let me just do this real quick. I'm going to share my screen again, and let me go back to Blackboard, and just remember that I went ahead and sent out an announcement already, and it's right there. There's your study guide. It's in Blackboard. Go to the announcement link, read it, and then I'll have another posting probably later in the week just to remind you about this. The exam is next week. I'll give you 2 sessions in class or live virtual next week to do review. Anything, just come prepared, ask me any questions you want. And then the following week, then we'll get into the project. Okay. All right, so I'm a little bit over. Any final thoughts? I know somebody might need to leave in a minute, but any final thoughts, questions about next week? Okay, fine. So please, again, these practice questions, I think you'll find them very helpful. You should be able to get all the resources you can. I do believe you can print them as well. So let me know if you have any issues with that. And then watch your Blackboard announcements. And then again, exam is scheduled next week. It goes live November 2nd. And then we'll still have meetings next week, and those will be purely just review sessions to cover any concepts you guys feel like you have any weaknesses on that you still need some assistance. All right. All right. So let me wrap this up. Again, email me if you have any questions about your quizzes or anything on the homeworks. And then again, come next Monday. That'll be a review session. And if I don't see you on Monday, you can be welcome to take the test during our class time as well. Okay. All right. Anything else before I end this session for today? Nothing? All right, let me wrap this up. And so again, I'll see you guys, possibly next Monday. And so good luck on your studying. If anything comes up, questions, just email me. I check my emails 24/7. All right, guys, everybody have a good day.